Hi everyone, this is John from findmycoat.com, and today we are going to talk about the 9 social classes or groups of people or types of people that bore coats of arms. So let's go ahead and get started. The first, and the one that we're typically most familiar with through our culture, is the titled nobility. These are people who were ennobled by a king or a queen or an emperor, an empress, and given a title, such as the common ones that most of us are well aware of, such as duke, earl, baron, and of course their mainland European equivalents, such as Freiherr, which is baron, Graf, which is count, and Viscount in France as well. So one example of this would be Leonard Torstensson, who was a Swedish field marshal and military engineer, nicknamed Blixten, which translates into English as lightning. And he was made Count of Ortala by Queen Christina of Sweden. And as part of that, he was given a coat of arms, which is shown to the right of his oil painting. And it features 2 cannons, obviously, because he was a field marshal. So, the next class that had coats of arms were the untitled nobility. Now, these were people who were ennobled, but they were not given a title. And the best example of this is the Hidalgos in Spain and the New World. One example was Pedro de Balbuena, ennobled on January 7th, 1576 by King Philip of Spain. And over to the right, we have the nobility documentation confirming the status of Hidalgo on Pedro de Balbuena, resident of Miranda del Castanar, exempting him from paying any future tributes to the king. So, along with that came tax-exempt status, and he had a coat of arms, which is depicted on the left lower corner of the book. Next class is the Landed Gentry. Now, these were people who owned significant amounts of land and lived nearly entirely off the rental income. And they had a county estate, usually a large house or several houses with surrounding outbuildings, farmlands, and woods. One example of such a family was the Fortescue family, who were landowners in Devon, and they had a coat of arms that was blazoned as follows: azure, aben engrailed argent, plain cotised or. They claim descent from feudal barons all the way back to Norman knights, supposedly. Now, the family went on to acquire title in the centuries to come, but at this time, I believe they were still landed gentry. But nevertheless, they had a coat of arms. The fourth class of people in medieval or middle-aged society that had coats of arms were the merchants or the bourgeoisie. They can be thought of as today's upper class or upper middle class, and these were people who lived in cities that were dedicated to commerce, merchants, craftsmen, artisans, and these were people that made a living that way, as opposed to being bound to land by feudal tenure. One example of a family of merchants who had a coat of arms was Balthazar Martineau, who was a French clockmaker. His brothers were clockmakers as well. They were a well-known clockmaking family at the time, with very ornate, high-quality clocks, and their coat of arms featured a sun on it. The next class who had coats of arms were the Burghers or the Patricians, and these were people who held rank or minor title in a medieval town, and they often served as city officials, as city councilors, things of that nature, and were influential within the local area. One example of this was the Pippenpoy family, who were influential in Brussels all the way as far back as the 13th century. And they had a coat of arms that was blazoned azure, 3 fleurs-de-lis, couped argent. And shown here is Sophia Anna Pippenpoy. The 6th class within society that was found to hold arms was the military. Certain high-ranking officials in the military could be granted coats of arms for their service and for acts of outstanding valor and bravery. One example of this is Michel Dubocage, who was a ship captain in the King's Navy in France during the war with the League of Augsburg. His valor and injuries earned him the rank of lieutenant at the age of only 16. He went on some commercial expeditions in the Pacific Ocean. He returned with a great fortune and procured a private mansion. Although he passed away, his family took over the trading business and were granted a coat of arms. Azure, 3 trees, eradicated argent, which is shown over to the right here, along with a oil portrait of the man himself. The 7th is the clergy and the church. Certain high-ranking officials within the clergy and the church could be granted coats of arms for their service. One such example was Jacob Mountain of Norfolk, England. He was an Anglican bishop of Quebec, and his coat of arms is depicted here as well. The 8th was academia. You had scientists, doctors, authors, and others who excelled and brought esteem to their sovereign and their realm. Sometimes they were granted coats of arms. One example was Jans Jacob Berzelius, a Swedish chemist. He was given title and a coat of arms in 1818. Now, the last category are prominent farmers. Some farmers in Switzerland bore arms, as well as in Normandy, Flanders, Lower Saxony, Frisia, Austria, and Denmark. Now, one example of this is possibly my family's coat of arms, the Lehmann family from Switzerland, that features a plowshare, and that obviously represents laboring in the earth, which farming is. And given that it's an occupational surname for feudal tenants who are bound to the land, derived from the German word lehen, which means to hold land, I would assume that they were likely farmers, likely kind of small-time farmers, but nevertheless possibly bore coat of arms. But that's something I still need to look into. But anyways, that's it. And if you would like to find your coat of arms, please visit findmycoat.com.